All right, guys. So today I'm going to look at recreating this photo grid that you get in Airbnb using Bricks Builder features. Um, and the way I'm going to build it is using purely Bricks Builder features that you do not need any add-ons or custom code to do. I will be using Advanced Theme or AT and ACSS or Automatic CSS purely for productivity. But you do not need either of these to create this. Now, simply so I can rip through this video and do it a lot quicker than what I'd normally be able to do. Anyway, so what we're going to build is, if you look at Airbnb and you look at a photo grid here for one of the properties, and you click on any of these photos, it opens up a pop-up. You get a grid displayed for those properties. Click on any of those there and you get a lightbox pop up. So that's what we're going to create. Now, since deciding to do this, I realized Airbnb actually have two different layouts. If you go to some properties, when you click on them, you actually get a segmented set of galleries depending on how they've been set up in B&B. We're not going to bother with that because the concept is the same. It just opens up a lightbox. All we're going to do is look at this first example here where you get a photo grid. Click on any of those and you get a single gallery pop up. Click on any of those and you get the lightbox pop up. Okay, so let's look at what we have here. We have a photo grid with 4 photos. When we click on any of these, we get all of the photos. I don't know how many are there. What do you got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever. So there's probably, 30, 40 photos, maybe even more. It's still going, still going. So even though there's a stack of photos, it only shows the first 5. The first photo is, if we look at this as a grid, as a 4-column grid, the first photo is 2 columns wide, 2 rows high, and the rest are just 1 column. Then we did have a button here for show all photos, and they all do exactly the same thing. All open up the same gallery. As you mouse over, you get a slight dimming effect on each of these, and if you tab to any of those, because they got the clipping on the outside, what they've done is they've gone for, I've actually checked it in the DOM, they've gone for an inset box shadow on these when you focus. So if I tab focus, we get an inset box shadow on these for our focus until we get to the button, which has got our standard focus. So that's it. It's a fairly simple grid, fairly simple pop-up, and a gallery. So how we built that, if I look at the editor here, there's my very quick version of it, and I'm going to look at the styling of this part as being pretty close to Airbnb, but once we click on it, it's just functional. So if I click on that, I get a pop-up with my gallery. I can escape or click the X. If I click on it again, click on any of these, it brings up the standard lightbox settings in Bricks, which you can always alter as well. So that's what we're going to build. This part is very, very close. The rest of it is same functionality, but I'm not going to bother styling it to the nth degree. All right, so if we look in the editor, if I edit that with Bricks, you can see I'm on 1.9.8 beta here. It's a pretty simple setup where we've got a container just to wrap our properties. We've got a BEM block up here, which is our Airbnb photos. We've got a grid, we've got an item. That's actually a button with a photo. And our CTA button is an icon and a bit of text. And we've turned that into a button. That is this layout. The rest of it is just a pop-up with a standard grid that goes to a lightbox. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to do a reset. So I'm going to go into my tools and WP reset, and I am running on local for WordPress. So what's it? Flywheel local. It does just take a little sec here while I reset that and log back in. So the reset's real quick. It's for some reason when you log back in, it takes a little bit, but that's not too bad. So we'll give it a few seconds. Okay, here it is there. So we've gone back to basically my base WordPress. My base WordPress, if we look at it, I've got advanced themer, I've got automatic CSS, I've actually got the beta version of that installed, the version 3 beta. By the way, it is the 3rd of the 5th, 2024 today, and we're on Bricks 1.9.8 beta, and we've got ACSS 3.0 beta. So the other things I've got enabled, I've got about the Faker Press, I've got frames, instant images so I can grab some images, and MetaBox so I can create my property custom post. These are the only important ones. So MetaBox, you don't need it. You can use custom code in your child theme to create your custom post. This is just much easier, and I want to rip through this. So, all right, enough said. So the first thing we need to do is create a post type for our properties. Sorry for the clunky keyboard too. I broke my other one. I still haven't replaced it. So if you can hear all the clicking, that's nothing I can do about that at the moment, unfortunately. So under advanced, we'll just give that a home icon just so we can separate it out in our menu here. And support, so I'm going to take the thumbnail out of here, and I'll explain why when I lay the gallery out. Because the way we're doing it in Bricks, which is the easiest way, which requires no coding. If you have thumbnails and you have other galleries, this method I'm going to show you won't work. You'll need some custom code to make it work for you. I'll explain that when I get to it. All right, so there's our post type. So we're going to add some custom fields to that. And that will be our properties, our property, I should say. And we want to make sure our custom fields are on our property type that we just created. And by the way, if you're using ACF or anything else, same concept, just different settings. Okay, my fields, I'm going to add a image with MetaBox. I add an image advanced field, which is allowing me to select multiple images or a gallery. And I'm actually going to call that gallery. And the ID automatically updated. It doesn't always happen with MetaBox. Sometimes that ID doesn't update and you've got to do it manually. So just watch that. And the other thing I'll do is I'll change the size to medium. Now that is only for your editor. So when you're actually editing in the editor, what size is going to display out. For some reason, it doesn't seem to do anything at the moment. There must be a bug in there, but we'll leave it on that anyway so that when the bug is fixed, or what if I'm doing something wrong, I'm not sure, but when it's fixed, it should work. So to publish, at the moment, we're just going to get the thumbnail sizes. All right, and that is our CPT done. One last thing we always need to do when we create CPTs is go into our settings, go into our permalinks, and we need to hit the save changes. If you don't do that, when you click on the view to view your property or your CPT, it'll just come up with page not found because WordPress doesn't know what the permalink structure should be for that CPT. So always when you finish creating CPTs, hit the save changes on your permalinks. All right. So now we have our property CPT up here. We're going to add a new property. I'm just going to call this luxury 5-bed home. I've cheated a bit here over in ChatGPT. I've just created a bit of a blurb, which I'm actually not going to use in this, but I'll chuck that in there anyway. Okay, and then we need to add some gallery media. So that's the gallery that we just created. That's the custom field for this property CPT. So I can hit the add media. You would have images of the property, but I don't. So I'm going to go to instant images, which is another cool plugin that I've got installed. I'm just going to type in home. This is good for mock-up stuff, right? So I'm just going to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know, how do we want? Maybe we have that one as well, 8. Now what we're doing is wait for those to download, you get all the text on them. Okay, there they are. Now the thing with instant images in using it for this is the select button won't be usable at this stage. I'm not sure why they haven't made that work, but so we're going to close this, go back to our add media, go to the media library, and all our images we downloaded are just there. So we're just going to select those. Okay, and then we're going to publish. And there's our property created. So now what we need to do is create a template to display the property. So we're going to Bricks, Templates, and we're going to create a new template. call it property single. And make sure we tell Bricks that that is a single template. Publish it. Edit it. All right, so the first thing we do with our template is go into the settings for the template, go to template settings, conditions, and we make sure we tell it is for our post type of properties. We then go into our populate content and we tell it we want a single post. And we're going to find the post that we just created, the property, and it will not show up in this list here. You've got to start typing to look for it. So I'm going to type luxury, LUX, and there's my luxury 5-bed home. Apply and preview. What that's going to do is going to use that property, the data from that property, so the images, the description, the title, for when we're doing our layout and our template here. Okay, so if I just add a section now, and in that section we're going to a block. I'll call that my Airbnb photos. I'll call this my Airbnb section up here. Okay, and then my Airbnb photos, I'm going to put in there a grid. I might call it a list. A list. And then we're going to put an item. I used to call it a grid, and I just got to get away from that because sometimes you might want it to show as a list, sometimes as a grid. So it's better off to say list, and then you can decide how you're going to display it. Okay, here's my item. Inside my item, I'm going to put another block, which will be my photo button. And inside my photo button, I'm going to put in a photo. I'll call that just a photo. All right, so our structure here would be our Airbnb photos list, Airbnb photos item, photo button, and photo. All right, so we also need a div, which is going to be our CTA button. Inside there, we're going to put a icon and a basic text. I'll call that a CTA icon. Oh, not STA. And CTA text. All right, so that should be our structure there. We'll just make that show. Okay, might as well select the icon over here as well. I'll make that a grid. Yeah, you probably use an SVG for this to avoid having to load fonts, but this is just rushing through this. All right, so there's our structure of what we need. Now, as I said, I'm going to use both Advanced Thema, AT, and ACSS, or Advanced Thema, AT, and Automatic CSS, ACSS. Now, from now on, I'm just going to go AT and ACSS because I get tongue-tied with those two. So, what I'm going to do, I can either use the BEM creator from ACSS and just hit apply classes, which is actually a good way of doing it. I have a personal preference at the moment for the AT one, so I'm going to right-click and use the class converter. Gives you a lot more options here. There are some benefits to the ACSS one as well. Gives you a lot more options here. Hit create classes. I've got all classes created for that. So my productivity benefit here is now I've got Airbnb photos. I've got my BEM block name created there. If I go to the list, it's automatically created that. So it's just a right click and create classes, which is saving an awful amount of time. Okay. Now, the thing I said about this, so I'm going to also right click on that same block and I'm going to check this box here to enable the root component. What that does is if this structure here is part of a bigger layout, for example, and I decide I want to run my automatic BEM creator from further up the DOM, or further up the structure, I should say, and I right click on that and run my class converter, you see it's got Airbnb section container, but from the next one down, it does not try to create elements for that BEM block because I've told it that's a root component, so it won't try and recreate classes going down there. Was the previous method you had to drag that out of the structure panel, run your class converter, and then drag it back to there so they didn't get additional classes created that aren't needed. So I love the idea of being able to just right click and say, make that a root component. Yeah. So what we're going to do is start working on style now. So it's our list. So we're going to turn our list into a, we're going to make also, by the way, with bricks, a trap we always fall into is styling without the class selected. So always, 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 unless you specifically want to style an ID, always look for this orange up here and make sure your class is selected before you start doing anything here. So we want to make that list there. We want to make that a UL. Okay, and because it's a UL, we want to go into the style and want to get rid of all of the margin and all of the padding. Okay, so that's all done. Now we then want to go to the next level down, and we want to make that a actually that doesn't matter for the HTML tag, but always make sure you select that. We want to make that an LI, so it's a list item. Okay, and on the photo button, we want to make sure that that is a button. Okay, so that's a button. Showing some really weird layouts. Oh no, we haven't set our grid yet. Okay, and on that, that's an image. That's okay. All right, so we can start styling. What I'm going to do is go to my list now, and I'm going to use my, I'm going to turn that into a grid, and we're going to use our ACSS right-click context menu. Super easy. So we actually want a space of XS, and we want a grid columns of 4, and we want a grid rows of 2. So it's just right-click, select what you want. How quick is that? All right. So let's have a look at this. If we go to our item, it's not displaying always properly in bricks, but there we go. So it's showing our grid there. We've got a bit too much gap, even at XS. So here's another cool feature. So I just space /2, enter, and it gives me a calc function. Now both ACSS and AT will do that for you. And that's given us a smaller spacing, which is closer to what you get with that. It's slightly different, but it's about what we get with that. All right. So we're cooking with gas. Now I'm going to pick a, now I'm going to do is just grab the dynamic data for those photos. So we're going to turn this item into a query loop. And what we're going to query is the media for this post. And I'll explain that very shortly, but we only want 5 of them. Okay, this is for our first layout. Now, remember earlier I said don't enable the thumbnail. This method only works if you only have one gallery of images and you don't have any other images, because this will actually pull all of the media associated with this post. If you want to have multiple galleries, or you want to have a thumbnail and some logos and all that sort of stuff on there on that post, you cannot use this method. You'd have to use some custom code. I tried using the MetaBox repeaters. When you use that, you get the drop down, but there's no way to tell it how many you want, so you can't restrict it to 5. You need to use some custom code to do that. Or if you want to pull a particular gallery, you'd need custom code for that as well. So what I want to do is make this tutorial using just bricks without custom code. So I'm pulling the media, which means you cannot have any other media attached to this post apart from that gallery. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So we've got 5 of those. And because we're pulling a media query, what we want to do is on our photo itself, on our button, what we need to tell it is to use the post ID for each of those. So it actually uses the ID of that post, and then it goes off and finds the associated image based on your settings here. So I'm just going to set that to medium large. Now, while we're here, we want this to have, it's going to make sure we select that again. I keep forgetting to look at that. Got to drill it into my brain. Always look up the top here before we start styling. Now this is okay because that's not attached to the class, but any of your styling is. So let's make it a, say, 4:3 ratio. So they're all the same. And again, this is an updating in the editor, but this will work. We want to set our object fit to cover so that when it scales, they fit properly. And that's all we need to do so far. With that, I'm going to hit the save on that. And just refresh the builder so you can see that that has actually worked. All right, so they're all a 4:3 ratio with the object fit set to cover, so that when they shrink or expand, it doesn't distort the image. All right, now, so what are we going to do next? Okay. So let's go to the layout where we've got the first image being 2 columns by 2 rows. Because this is a loop, we can't target individual elements in the structure panel, so we need to do that with CSS. So we're going to go back to the block level, and I always recommend doing this is on the block level, put all of your custom CSS there. When I say block, I'm talking about BEM block, not the bricks block element. So if I'm talking about block or element, I'm talking about BEM. All right, so we're going to add a root item. So because we call this element here an item, it is we can use this placeholder here, so the root and the underscore item, that will definitely be, if we actually just check that, so that will be the actual class name. Okay, so we don't need to think about it because we've named it the same methodology every time. So all we need is our root dash dash and what is going to be the name of our element on here. Okay, so we're going to get the first child of that, and all this autocomplete here, by the way, is because of advanced SEMA. So the anyway, so we want to do the grid column, and we're going to start at line 1, but we want to span for 2. Okay, and with the rows, we want to start grid row. We want to start at line 1, and we want to span for 2. There we go, done. Easy, right? So this is only targeting the first child, and it's telling it to span 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay, now, next thing I probably should have mentioned before, so this list here is our grid, right? By default, all of the items under this grid are going to be full height because of the way the cells work. But because we've got another cell underneath that, which is a button, it's not always necessarily going to be full height. So what we're going to do is just to make sure it is, on every one of these, we want to go through and set the flex grow to 1, which means go the full height. And the same on the photo. And that's not going to be available on the content tab. You need to go to the style tab, layout, and then go down to the bottom, and we can set the flex grow on that. So you see the one on the left there. Actually, just go, you see that little tiny bit off. As soon as I set the flex grow to 1, it filled the space. So it's just a little bit of a calculation error in the browser when it's doing the 4:3 ratio. So it's slightly off. Flex grow makes it go to the full height. Okay, so there is our initial layout done for the images. Now we want to position our CTA button. Did we make that a button? I think we did. No, we didn't. I'm going to make that a button as well. Okay, now we want to position our CTA button on the corner up here. Actually, let's just style that up a little bit first. So let's make that a flex, make it a no wrap ever. We want a row, and we want it to center vertically. Too much gap there, I think. So on the column gap, I'm going to right click, use my excess ACSS. If that's too much, I can do a divided by 2 there as well. Whatever you like. Okay, and then on the icon, let's set the icon to be, let's say get 1.3 rem, M. I want it to be M because based on the font size there. So 1.23 M, that looks about right. Let's give it some padding. Right click context, XS, that's I'm on the button, get rid of that. Sorry, I'm on the icon. We want to go to the parent, XS, maybe that's too big, so we'll do divided by 2 again, so less. We're going to get rid of our button background and just make that white. Okay, what happened to our layout? Did I not link them? I did. That looks like it's got more. Maybe this is just, have I still got? I thought I got rid of that. Okay. All right. So on the button, we've got our padding, XS2. Okay, now what do we need? We need a border. Let's chuck a border on there. I'm using AT with the bricks beta, so there's a couple of little clashes in there that are being sorted out. Also, the beta for ACSS, these control key for the shades isn't working in here, or the transparency, so I'm going to just use a color, solid color there. And then in our border, right click, and let's do a medium radius around there. And there's our button style, which is kind of similar to this button. So not exactly the same, but kind of similar to that. Okay. All right. Now we need to place that. So because we've got a wrapper container here, which is our top level Airbnb, I need to go to that container and I need to set the position of that to relative, so that when we go to our CTA button and set the position of that to absolute, we can stick that on the right of 1 rem, bottom 1 rem, and there we go. We've positioned our button here inside of our parent container. So just made the parent relative and this one absolute and stuck it inside there. Okay, so that's that bit done. Now let's look at the styling of the, so when I roll my mouse over, I get a slight dimming effect. If I tab to it, I get a inner box shadow. Okay, so we're going to do that now. All right, so on the images, what we're going to do is go back to our top block for our photo layout. And in our CSS, I'm going to just, there's something I always do because your CSS can become a little bit complicated. You might want to be able to change colors and sizes and that sort of stuff. So one thing I typically do is I always start from what am I going to style, and then create some variables for that. So I'm going to create a overlay, background, and we're going to make that just a, for the moment, we're just going to make it black so we can see it working. Okay, and we're going to do a box shadow for the focus. And what's going to be 0 offset, 0 blur. Let's make it 3 pixels so we can see it. Make it, again, we'll make it black for now. And we want to make that an inset. So it goes inside the box, not outside the box. So we're just going to set that as a variable. Okay, down here on our item, we're going to use the after element to add our overlay to it. But to start with, we need to set on the item, we need to set the position to relative. And you can do this through the UI or through here. I prefer, when I'm actually working on changing states, I prefer to do it in the CSS editor here so you can see one place what it's doing. Okay, and root. After, we're going to set the, what am I going to do? Content. Content. We need to always make sure we got just empty content or this won't work. We got position of absolute. We have, well, I don't know what's putting those in there. We need a position of absolute. We need to disable our pointer events. So it's sitting on top of buttons or links. It's not going to interfere with it. And what else do we need to do? Content, inset. 0. That's going to make it fill the space. So that is, we're gonna make a single pseudo element for the after which we're going to use in two different states. We're going to use this for both the hover state and the focus state. So what we do is, because it's common, I'm just going to make one for that, and then I'm going to just do another one for the other, for the overlay effect. And we won't use the hover there. We're just going to see what it looks like. So we're going to change the background to our variable up here, which is our overlay background. Okay, you can see we've gone black. Okay, so now we can look at what do we want that to be. Okay, let's make that black transfer. So this is AT look ahead, showing me the ACSS variables. All right. How's that look? That looks decent enough. Maybe it's too much. We'll leave it at that so we can see it actually working. Okay, now we don't want that always there. We only want that when we hover. All right. So now we get it when we hover. So create the effect when you're without the hover state, so you can see it happening, and then add the hover state after you've finished. Now, the reason I created this separately, the after separately here, is because we're also going to use this for our focus state. So let's do the same for our focus state. So I'm going to do root item after again. In this case, we're going to do the box shadow. Of var focus box shadow. Okay, so we can see here we've got a 3 pixel inset border, which is black. Maybe we don't want black, we do black trans 50. Okay, so there we go. That's similar to what we've got there. It's probably a little bit thicker, but just so we can see it happening, we'll just leave it at that. So there's our focus state. So what we want to do is now change that. So that's only going to be the case when we have focus within. Okay, now the reason I focus within is because our focus when we tab to it is going to be on the button down here, not on the item. So we want to say when that item has an element inside of it that has focus, we want to apply that after there. Now I'm going to show you a problem that's going to occur here. So I'm going to save that and have a look at the front end. Okay, so our hover states are working. If I tab to it, I've got my inner focus, but I've also got this outline. Now that outline, because I'm using automatic CSS, is automatically added. If it's enabled, it automatically added to your elements, which we don't want for these photos. We want it for everything else, like the button, but we don't want it for these photos. So we need to remove that. So easiest way to find that is if we use our inspector, pick one of these elements, it will be the button, and we're going to force the state of focus visible, all right? And we can see on the inspector on the right hand side, that is the rule that ACSS is applying. One thing I noticed straight away is very specific in that you've got body.bricks is front end and then the focus visible. So if we try and override this with a simple rule, it's not going to work. And I'll show you what I mean. If I type in here, if I do a roots, oops. Now we called that photo button, the button, so it's actually got a class name of -- photo button. So if we set the outline to none, for the focus visible state, save that, have a look here, and we focus our button. sorry, not focus, focus visible. Shows us another issue that we need to deal with as well, actually. So if we go focus visible, we still get the focus outline because our rule here, which is the Airbnb photos photo button, is being overridden by the bricks focus, and then it's been overridden by ACSS. And that's because they've got this specificity added with the body bricks' front end. So we're actually going to copy that and stick that into our rule by prefixing our rule with that body bricks' front end. Save that. Okay, and look at the button now. If I right click on that button now and force the state of focus visible, we no longer have the ACSS rule because now ours is more specific, so we're overriding it. So we can tab to these and we're getting our inner shadow, but we're not getting our ACSS outline for focus. So that's how we do that. So you got to check the specificity of it to make sure that works. Okay. Right, so that's that. Now we did notice also that when you click on this, you get that dotted border. So let's have a look at removing that as well. And we only want to remove it for these because we want to leave it as defaults, because I'm not going to determine what happens on the rest of the style, just on this particular set here. So on that focus, what we find, we've got a focus outline here. So I'm going to do the same thing on the button. So let's get rid of the focus on the button by using our bricks as front end photo button. Just pull that there. Focus, outline, none. And we'll also, we may have used box shadow because you can use box shadow for your outline as well. So I'm going to set the box shadow to none as well. All right. Let's see what we've got now. If I hold my mouse down, I don't get the dotted line. I do get the focus, but I don't get the dotted line. Okay. Just going to force the state of focus. And I don't get the dotted line. I get the outline instead. So there we go. So here's my overriding rule on focus. Set the outline to none on the button, that is. Okay. So that's pretty much the styling of that done, except for I think we had a rounded edge, I think, up here. We do. We've got the outside edge rounded. So all we have to do is go to our top level here, the class there, border. We're going to use a medium, which we won't see because the image will be overflowing that. So then we need to go to the layout and we need to set the overflow to hidden. All right, now we're getting really close, aren't we? Here we go. So now we've got a pretty similar layout to Airbnb. Got a rounded edge on the corner of these. We can roll over these. We get our hover state. We can tab to them. We get our focus state, and then we tab through to the button. These are all buttons, by the way. So now, what's the next bit? We need to now have this pop up a gallery. So we need to now create another template, which will be a bricks, templates, add new, and we want this to be a pop-up, and we're going to call this our property photo pop-up. We've already told it to pop up, publish that, edit with bricks. Okay, so we're going to go into our settings. In our template settings, we're going to set the conditions to be for the post type of properties. You can have it on the whole site, but there's no point in having it unless you're going to have this on your property because you don't need the pop-up and you're just going to pollute the DOM if you have it everywhere. So we're on our properties only. On our pop-up, the only thing I'm going to do here is set our width and height. That's a 100 VW, and I'll set the height to 100 SVH, so the smallest view height. You're probably going to use custom CSS for this in reality because some browsers still may not support that. So you might want to do a fallback to 100 VH on that. So I'm just going to keep it simple here. All right. So we then add our section. Here's our container there. And widen our editor update here. Refresh the editor. Make a few, maybe some of the optimizations that the Bricks boys are doing. Sometimes the editor just doesn't update. You got to hit save and refresh. Here's our container there. Let's keep this in line with what we're doing. So we're going to do Airbnb. Popup. Make that a wrapper. And inside that wrapper, we're going to add we're going to add, oh, my AT stuff's all gone. Let me just refresh that. We've got some red stuff happening here. There you go, all my AT stuff's back again. Okay, so we're going to add a title. We're going to add a, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a div. I'm going to get for my CTA button to close it. Inside that div, I'm going to add a icon, a text box. In our heading, we're going to add a gallery. Gallery under the heading. Heading a heading 1. Well, actually, it's a pop-up, so we'll make it a heading 2. All right. Now, thinking. Okay, so that needs to be our post title. Okay. The image gallery needs to come from our MetaBox gallery. So it's the full gallery. We then want to actually just look at these names here. I'm going to call that CTA, close button, close icon, close text. On the text, I'm just going to make that a span. Make our icon a close icon. Okay, make that a button. Button, and for the text, we're just going to put that close. Pop up, and now we're ready to rumble. Okay, so from the top here, I'm going to make this whole thing. I wouldn't normally do this if we're creating reusable blocks, but this is only ever going to be used once. So I'm going to go from the section down. So I'm going to right click that class converter, create the classes, and we've got classes created now. Okay, so let's go back to our image gallery, and on that we want that to be just a 768 by 0. Make sure our class selected. Make it a masonry, and we want it to be 2 columns. And let's put some gap of say 4 pixels in there in between them. What else do we need to do to that? I think what we'll do is shrink the wrapper as well. So I think that's probably too wide. So I'm going to make that say max width of 600 pixels. Now the close button, I don't think needs to be inside that. It needs to be outside of it, because we're going to position that absolutely, or fixed actually. We're going to use this fixed position. All right, let's style up our close button. So on our close button, we're going to, so that's already a button. Get rid of our background, actually set our background to white. We're going to button itself, set that to 3 rem. And on the close text, we're going to add, there's an ACSS class I'm going to add called hidden accessible. Hidden accessible. If you don't have ACSS, do a Google search for accessibility, hiding for accessibility. and there's heaps of CSS examples. What that does is that on anything other than a screen reader, it hides that text, but the screen reader can read that text. So it's just for accessibility. So we're going to hide that text. Now we're going to go on the close button. We're going to set our position on that to be fixed, and maybe the top. We're going to have our admin bar. So let's put it out of the way of that. So I'm going to maybe 4rem and right 4rem. It's probably a bit too far down from the top, but because we've got the admin bar, I want you to be able to see it. So there's our close button done. There's our image gallery done. Actually, one other thing we need to do in the image gallery is we need to tell it to link to the lightbox. Okay, we want the full size image. So on this pop-up, all we've done is told it to be full screen. We've added our post title, we've added image gallery. We've told it to use the MetaBox gallery that we created, and we've added a close button here. We now need to tell that close button that it can close. When you click it, we want to hide an element, which is you can do self or pop-up. I'm going to use the pop-up. Pop-up, and then select the photo pop-up so it knows that it needs to close that pop-up. All right, so that's it done. It's our property pop-up done. Now, if we go back to our template, I'm going to refresh the template. Come on. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to do is on each of our buttons, we need to add an interaction to open the pop-up. So when that's clicked, we want to show an element of a pop-up, and we want to use our property pop-up. Now, because I've got AT, I can just copy this. I'm going to hit this copy interactions, head over to my CTA button, and I'm going to paste my interactions onto that. Otherwise, you have to just go and create the same thing there. All right, that's that done. So hit the save on that. Now, one thing that's a bit of a tip here, if we just preview this, so close that, close that. If we preview this here, because we're previewing a template, the buttons aren't going to open up the pop-ups. They don't exist yet because the pop-ups are only on the post type of property, and this is actually previewing a template, which is a different post type. So what we need to do is go back to our properties that we created. Here's our properties, and we need to actually view an actual property. So it opens up the single template. Then when we click the button, it opens up the pop-up. And then when we click on the image, it opens up the lightbox. So that's it done. So most of the work was done in here, creating the pop-up, adding the image gallery to it. It's just, and the lightbox is just so easy. It's just incredible. I love this about Bricks, that it's so flexible. This may not be the perfect solution for your particular instance, but just knowing you can do it this simply is, I think, absolute godsend. And you can work from here on styling. Maybe you can create some custom code if you've got multiple image galleries on a post, or you've got other media on that post. So this function here won't work because if you're pulling, the caveat here is if you're querying the media, you're querying all of the media, not just that one image gallery that you put up there. So this is in simplicity, but it just shows how it can be done. And I hope that makes sense. The only thing I haven't really done too much here with is the accessibility. So I'm going to come back to it very quickly. So on my list, I'm going to add an attribute of my ARIA label. ARIA label, and I'm going to call that my property photos. Okay, and on my button, on my button here, I'm going to add an attribute of ARIA label. Oops. And that could be open gallery. Okay, now The next one is a little bit more complex. Now, I thought about this here. So the photo button, we can add a ARIA label to it. I'm not sure what to do with this actually. So if someone's got a great idea, this would be really, really appreciated. So if I add my ARIA label here, and I use the post title for that, that'll just add the post title of that actual image. So I'm going to show you what I mean. So if I have a look at this now and have a look at my DOM, oops. What I'm getting there is, so I've got on my UL, I've got my ARIA label as property photos. I've got on my LI, it doesn't matter because it's just an item. On our button, I've got ARIA label photo by Min Pam. Now that is just the alt that came from that photo that I uploaded. What we really want to have here is if we look at Airbnb's version. Sorry, my mouse thing isn't clicking this properly. If we look at the button on here, see it's unique cabin, rustic architectural features, and then image 1. So that's okay because it's got the alt tag label there, but then this image 1. Okay, we don't have anything in Bricks that we can pull the current index from. So you need to use custom code for that. So it's perfectly okay to, I'm just trying to show this without using custom code. There should be a token for your index in the loop, so we can use it for this kind of thing. That would be brilliant, but there currently isn't. The other thing, we've got the rustic architectural features. That's okay. What did we end up with ours? We ended up with photo by Min. That's not so bad. Photo by Nathan. Yeah, I'd rather say open gallery. Actually, to be honest, I'm not sure what I should put here. But from a accessibility point of view, we've got a focus state, we've got a hover state, we've got a, these are all buttons, we've got a alt tag on our, ARIA label on our grid or our list, and we've also got a ARIA label on the buttons that open these. And I think I missed that on the button here. Let me have a look at that. No, I did put on the button open gallery. So if we look at the button here, there's our button. We have got an ARIA label of open gallery. Now, when we click on this, it is opening up a pop-up. I did find some stuff. Where was it? Under the resources for A11Y here. Under these patterns. Couldn't really find anything for pop-ups. So I did find a dialogue one. Where's our dialogue? Alert dialogues. Feed menu buttons. Nothing really there for pop-ups. There's alerts, dialogues. Maybe if we look at the dialogues. Look at the example. So we do have, yeah, there's nothing here that really relates to the pop-up. So anyone that knows the best way to do that, love some feedback on, what should I be doing to tell that these buttons that, they're opening up a pop-up. And when the pop-up opens, what ARIA attributes should I be putting on that pop-up as well? So that would be really cool if someone could give me that feedback. But I'm going to end this here. Hopefully that's been helpful and gives you some insight into things that you can do quite simply with bricks and query loops and CPTs, and the I guess the benefit of using advanced SEMA and ACSS for productivity. Your simple right clicks, your simple shortcuts, it just speeds things up, especially for people like myself. I'm a touch typist, 2-finger touch typist. I don't type at the speed of thought, and those sort of things actually really, really help me. And I'm sure a lot of you that don't, have these lightning fast skills. Anyway, so that's where I'm going to end it. So if you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thanks, guys.